When the announcement first arrived, no one in the Galactic Council knew how to react. It was delivered in the middle of what was supposed to be a normal session, nothing dramatic. Just another long day of debates, arguments, and slow progress. Delegates from dozens of planets were settling into their places, preparing for hours of discussion, when the message appeared on the main display. At first, many thought it was an error or a joke, because it was so short and unexpected. But the seal on it was unmistakable. It came directly from Earth's Central Administration. The entire message contained only a single sentence, effective immediately. Humanity withdraws from all diplomatic channels. There was no explanation. No warning, no soft language, no transition plan. Just that one sentence. For a few seconds, the room stayed completely still, almost frozen. Representatives who had spent years studying Earth, arguing with Earth, negotiating with Earth, were unable to make sense of what they were seeing. Even those who usually had something clever to say remained silent. It was as if the galaxy had suddenly tilted slightly to one side, and everyone needed a moment to find their balance again. Then the whispers began. Delegates leaned toward each other, asking the same question in a dozen different languages. Is this real? What happened? Why would humans do this? Some were shocked, some were offended, and a few, honestly, were a little afraid. Humans were known for being unpredictable, but no one imagined they would take such a massive step without warning. One representative stood up and asked if the translation system had made a mistake. The translation team checked twice, then a third time, but the results stayed the same. The message was real. The wording was clear. Humanity was stepping away from the council completely. After that confirmation, the room broke into loud confusion. Some wanted the council to send a reply immediately. Others argued that Earth might be testing them, and they should wait to see if another message followed. A few insisted the announcement must be some sort of emergency situation on Earth. But deep inside, everyone felt that this was deliberate. Humans were not the type to accidentally send a galaxy-shaking message. What made the situation even stranger was that Earth had always been active in diplomacy. Sometimes too active. They joined every discussion, asked difficult questions, pushed for changes, challenged old traditions, and never hesitated to call out unfair decisions. Many species admired their courage. Others found it irritating. But no one ever imagined they would simply disappear from the process. A few council members who had worked closely with the human delegation tried to calm the room. They said humanity was emotional, but they always explained their decisions. They said Earth wouldn't just walk away from something as big as interstellar diplomacy without giving a reason. But even they looked confused. They knew something serious must have happened behind the scenes. The head of the council attempted to restore order. They asked the communication team to open a direct channel to Earth, even though it went against protocol to respond so quickly. The team tried multiple frequencies, sent multiple request signals, but each attempt bounced back with the same automated response. This channel is no longer active. Hearing that made the room even more unsettled. It meant that Earth didn't just send a message. They had shut everything down purposefully. The council could no longer contact them directly. Some representatives looked around the room nervously, as if expecting something else to happen. The idea that humanity would cut off such an important connection so cleanly felt surreal. Meanwhile, news of the message began spreading outside the council chamber. The buildings surrounding districts were full of reporters, analysts, visitors, and assistants from different worlds. When they heard what happened, the atmosphere changed instantly. People gathered in small groups, staring at their portable displays, trying to confirm the news. For many, Earth was not just another member planet. It was a key player in nearly every major discussion. The thought of them withdrawing created a wave of worry that traveled from person to person. Inside the council hall, debates started growing louder. One representative from a long-time rival species said humanity was acting childish and would return when they realized they couldn't manage on their own. Another said humans must be facing a crisis and needed time. Others argued that Earth was reacting to a recent policy dispute, but they didn't specify which one. There had been many disagreements lately, so it was easy to believe any one of them might have pushed things too far. But even though theories filled the air, no one had actual answers. And that uncertainty was the most uncomfortable part. The galaxy didn't like unanswered questions, especially when they were big ones. Slowly, a sense of seriousness settled over everyone. The council members realized this wasn't just a diplomatic issue. It was a turning point. With humans gone, the balance inside the council would shift. Some species depended heavily on human trade routes. Others relied on Earth's scientific cooperation. A few depended on humans to mediate conflicts. Without their presence, many systems would feel the change immediately. The head of the council finally called for everyone to stop arguing and sit down. Their voice was steady but heavy, as if even they were unsure what to do. They reminded everyone that the situation needed careful handling. A wrong step could make things worse. They suggested forming a special team to study the announcement closely, to look for clues in Earth's recent actions, and to try indirect communication channels. Some members agreed. Others looked doubtful. But no one had a better idea. By this point, hours had passed, and no follow-up message from Earth arrived. That silence felt heavier than any words. A few representatives tried to reassure each other that humans were probably preparing an explanation, but their voices lacked confidence. Silence, especially from humans, was unusual. It suggested that Earth was not interested in debating or discussing anything. Not right now. One of the council's senior advisors spoke softly, but everyone heard it clearly. If humans chose silence, it means they already made up their mind. That statement sent a quiet chill through the room. People exchanged uneasy glances. They understood what it meant, because humanity had a reputation for being firm once they reached a decision. They were flexible until they weren't, and when they finally drew a line, they stayed behind it. Outside, the news networks began preparing emergency broadcasts. They wanted to explain the significance of the message to ordinary citizens across the galaxy. Anchors practiced lines. Analysts hurriedly searched for past incidents involving Earth, and commentators tried to guess what would happen next. The story was already being labeled the diplomatic crisis of the century. Back inside the council chamber, representatives slowly started accepting the situation, even if they didn't understand it. Some were frustrated. Some felt guilty, wondering if they had played a role in pushing Earth away. Others worried about the long-term consequences. A few members, who were more sympathetic to humanity, asked the council to remain patient and not make assumptions. They reminded everyone that Earth had contributed greatly to the galaxy's progress over the years. It wasn't fair to judge them without knowing the full story. Their words helped calm the atmosphere a little, but only for a moment. The head of the council called for the session to end early. No one complained. People gathered their documents, devices, and translation units slowly, as if they were unsure what to do next. Groups formed near the exits, talking quietly, trying to understand the situation. But no matter how many theories they discussed, nothing felt certain. Some delegates walked out of the building with troubled expressions. Others walked faster, eager to speak to their own governments. A few paused outside the chamber, staring at the large council flag, wondering if this was the beginning of a much larger change. On the other side of the galaxy, on Earth, the human delegation building remained dark, except for a single room, the one used to send the message. No one on the council knew what was happening inside that room, or what conversations were taking place. But one thing was clear. Humanity had taken a step that, would affect every corner of the galaxy and somewhere deep in the minds of many council members. A quiet thought formed. What happens when a species known for bold decisions suddenly chooses silence? That question lingered in the air long after the announcement faded from the screen. For the next several days, the galaxy couldn't talk about anything except Earth's sudden withdrawal. Every news channel, every communication hub, every small community in every star system tried to understand what could have pushed humans to such a dramatic step. Some people hoped it was a misunderstanding. Others believed something serious had happened behind closed doors. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity would never make such a move without a powerful reason. The Council had ordered silence on the matter until they had more information, but that didn't stop anyone. Reporters interviewed former diplomats, analysts studied old Council recordings, and expert panels popped up everywhere, each trying to explain the mystery behind Earth's decision. Even ordinary people, who usually didn't care about political matters, now had theories of their own. Hidden inside this wave of confusion was a quiet truth. For years, humanity had been feeling ignored, sidelined, and sometimes disrespected. But few outside Earth had noticed how deep the frustration had grown. Back on Earth, inside one of their major administrative buildings, a small group of advisors sat around a long table, reviewing years of records. These were the records that captured every disagreement, every interrupted speech, every dismissed proposal, and every moment when human concerns were brushed aside as too emotional, too idealistic, or too disruptive. The advisors weren't angry anymore, just tired. Tired in a way that felt heavy, like things had been building up for so long that the final decision barely felt like a choice. It felt like something that had been waiting to happen. One advisor scrolled through an old recording where a human representative tried to speak about a developing crisis on a smaller planet. They weren't trying to accuse anyone. They were simply trying to protect a weaker species. But halfway through the speech, another delegate interrupted and laughed a little, saying humans were once again overreacting. The moment had been brushed off at the time, but now, watching it again, the advisor understood how painful it must have been for the person delivering that message. Another advisor pulled up a file about a trade agreement the humans had been pushing for nearly 5 years. Earth believed the agreement would help poorer planets get better access to essential supplies. But every time it was brought up, it was delayed, dismissed, or twisted into something completely different. Humans kept trying, hoping patience would make a difference. But patience didn't change anything. Slowly, the advisors started seeing a pattern they hadn't fully noticed before. It wasn't one big incident that broke the relationship. It was hundreds of smaller moments that piled up, year after year, until they became too heavy to carry. Earth's leaders had tried discussing these concerns quietly within the Council. They had tried adjusting their approach, their language, even their patience. But nothing worked. Sometimes it felt like the more humans tried to contribute, the less seriously they were taken. And this wasn't just one person's view. Many diplomats returned home with similar moments where they felt unheard, moments where they felt they were talking to a room that had already decided their voice was optional. The final disagreement that triggered the withdrawal was still fresh in everyone's mind. It had happened only a few weeks before the message was sent. Human delegates had arrived ready for a discussion about new safety protocols for shared travel routes. They had prepared data showing that several small transport fleets faced unnecessary risks. The idea was simple: improve the travel lanes, protect smaller worlds, and prevent future accidents. At first, it seemed like everyone agreed. But when the time came to vote on the matter, the discussion shifted in a strange direction. A few council members suddenly suggested sweeping changes to Earth's own responsibilities, changes that had nothing to do with the original agenda. They accused humans of exaggerating the dangers, despite the clear evidence. One representative even suggested Earth liked to cause drama, to appear important. That moment left the human delegation speechless. They weren't trying to gain influence, they were trying to save lives. Yet the conversation turned into something else entirely, something that left a bitter taste in the air. After that meeting, Earth's representatives held a private discussion. Some wanted to keep trying. Others were too exhausted to continue. But for the first time, even the most patient voices sounded tired. They were tired of being misunderstood, tired of pushing through walls, tired of feeling like their efforts didn't matter. When they returned to Earth with their reports, the leaders listened carefully. They didn't react right away. They wanted to understand everything before making a decision. For several weeks, Earth quietly reviewed years of interactions, looking not for blame, but for clarity. They wanted to see the whole picture. The whole picture was painful. There were countless examples where humans were treated with suspicion or mocked for caring too much about smaller worlds. Even when Earth tried to help, they were often accused of having hidden motives. And while some council members were supportive, the overall atmosphere had changed over time. People didn't see it happening all at once, but it had become more and more obvious. The moment Earth realized the council no longer respected their efforts, something inside shifted. It was like being in a long friendship where one side slowly stops listening, and no matter how hard you try to fix things, nothing works. Eventually, you don't feel disappointed anymore. You just feel done. Earth's leaders held one final meeting, one that would decide their future. It wasn't emotional or loud. It was calm, almost quiet. They discussed what it would mean to leave the council, what challenges they would face, and how it might affect their relationships with other worlds that still depended on them. No one took the decision lightly. But the more they talked, the clearer it became that staying would only lead to more frustration and less progress. One advisor described it as being stuck in a room where everyone speaks, but no one listens. The room went silent after that. Everyone understood. That was when the decision was made. The message they sent to the council was short, because explanations would only lead to more debates, and debates were the very thing they needed to step away from. A long letter would invite more questions. A long speech would be twisted or ignored. But a single sentence left no room for confusion. After the message was delivered, Earth expected a strong reaction from the council, and they were right. But what surprised humans was how fast the galaxy reacted. Even on Earth, people were shocked by how quickly the news spread. People in small towns, students in classrooms, workers on space stations. Everyone was talking about the decision. Some people felt relieved, saying it was long overdue. Others were nervous about the future, unsure what might come next. But almost everyone agreed that humanity needed time to breathe, to step back, and to rethink how they wanted to engage with the wider galaxy. Inside Earth's leadership buildings, the atmosphere became strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, the pressure felt lighter. They still had a lot of concerns, but they didn't feel trapped anymore. They had taken control of their direction, and that gave them a sense of clarity they hadn't felt in a long time. But stepping away didn't mean they stopped caring. Part of the reason the decision was so difficult was because humanity cared deeply about the galaxy. They cared about fairness, about cooperation, about helping smaller worlds grow. They had joined the council with hope and optimism. They had believed in the idea of unity across species. That hope didn't disappear overnight. It hurt to let go of something they once believed in so strongly. Yet sometimes, stepping away is the only way to rebuild something better later. As the days passed, analysts across the galaxy began piecing together Earth's reasons. And while none of them had the full story, they were getting closer. They noticed patterns in old council meetings, moments where humans weren't treated fairly, moments that didn't look serious at the time, but now made sense when seen together. One popular network aired a discussion where the host said, maybe humanity wasn't being dramatic. Maybe they were being patient for too long. That statement went viral. People began re-watching old council sessions, and slowly, sympathy for Earth grew stronger. Even some council members began to reflect on their own behavior. A few wondered if they had pushed too hard, dismissed too much, or taken Earth for granted. Meanwhile, Earth continued working quietly, without explaining themselves to anyone. They weren't angry. They weren't trying to make a point. They were simply trying to heal from years of frustration. And while the rest of the galaxy tried to understand them, humanity was already looking forward, planning the next steps of their journey steps that would change the future in ways no one yet understood. For the Galactic Council, the days after Earth's withdrawal felt like a storm that wouldn't stop growing. The Council had faced many crises in the past: economic collapses, border tensions, natural disasters on distant planets, but nothing felt as unsettling as this. It wasn't just the loss of a member. It was the loss of a presence that had become a crucial part of interstellar cooperation. Inside the central chamber, the atmosphere had changed completely. Normally, the room was filled with predictable routines, delegates arriving with confidence, assistants moving around calmly, translation screens flickering quietly. But now the energy felt nervous. People arrived early, yet spoke less. They acted as if something invisible had cracked in the foundation of the council. And no one wanted to be the one who stepped wrong and widened the crack. The first session after Earth's withdrawal began with a heavy silence. The head of the council tried to speak with confidence, but the careful tone in their voice revealed how uncertain they felt. They called the meeting to order and asked everyone to focus on finding a solution. But even before the session officially started, several representatives began arguing. One representative stood and announced that the council must send a new message to Earth immediately, something polite but firm, insisting that humanity reconsider its decision. Another representative disagreed, saying Earth needed space and sending more messages would only push them further away. Yet another insisted that the council had done nothing wrong and that Earth was overreacting. The disagreements spread like sparks traveling across dry wood. The head of the council interrupted, reminding everyone that the galaxy depended heavily on cooperation. They warned that without Earth's involvement, things would become difficult very quickly. This wasn't an exaggeration. Humans were deeply connected to interstellar trade, research partnerships, security programs, transportation routes, cultural exchanges, and dozens of other systems. Removing them created gaps that were already starting to show to understand how serious things were becoming. The council invited several experts to speak. The first was an economic analyst who showed charts of how many trade routes passed through Earth's space. Without Earth's participation, those routes needed new supervision. Companies were confused. Transport fleets were confused. Smaller planets that depended on Earth's trade networks were the most confused. The second expert spoke about scientific cooperation. Humans had contributed technology, medicine, and resource-sharing programs that many planets relied on. Without access to those programs, progress would slow down. Several projects were already paused because they needed Earth's approval or assistance to continue. The third expert talked about peacekeeping operations. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, but they played a unique role. They were often the ones who negotiated between species that didn't trust each other. They were the middle voice that many relied on when things got heated. Without that voice, conflicts had more room to escalate. Hearing these reports, the delegates grew more tense. Everyone had known Earth was important, but now they were seeing exactly how important. The galaxy wasn't collapsing, but it was definitely wobbling. During a break, small groups formed around the chamber. People whispered urgently, trying to guess what Earth was planning next. Some believed humanity was preparing a new alliance outside the Council. Others thought Earth was tired and simply wanted to avoid further conflict. A few suggested that maybe the Council should accept this and move forward without humans. But that idea didn't last long. Even those who found humans difficult admitted that Earth played a stabilizing role. One delegate from a peaceful species said softly, "When humans speak, people listen. Even those who disagree still listen." It was true. Humans had a strange way of getting others to focus in another corner of the chamber. Several representatives from planets that depended heavily on Earth looked worried. Without humans in the Council, who would defend their interests? Who would bring up the issues that bigger powers ignored? Some of these smaller planets had always felt comforted knowing that Earth would voice concerns on their behalf. Meanwhile, the communication team continued trying to reach Earth through secondary channels. Each attempt ended the same way. Either the message didn't go through, or they received the same neutral automatic reply. It didn't sound angry or cold. It simply stated the truth. Communication was unavailable at this time. That neutral tone made the Council even more nervous. Earth wasn't acting emotional or aggressive. They were acting organized, decisive, quietly confident. Those qualities made the situation even harder to predict. Later in the day, the Council formed a special response committee, a group of members from different species who were assigned to study Earth's actions and advise the Council on what to do next. The committee members had mixed feelings. Some felt honored. Others felt stressed. But all of them understood that their task was enormous. The committee studied the timeline of the past few years, focusing on moments where tensions between Earth and the Council had grown. They reviewed recordings, documents, and private reports. The more they watched, the more uncomfortable they became. They spotted interruptions during human speeches, jokes made at Earth's expense, dismissed proposals, unfair accusations. And while none of these moments seemed serious by themselves, the pattern was unmistakable. One committee member sighed heavily and said, "We should have seen this coming." But they hadn't, or maybe they did. But no one took it seriously at the time. When the committee returned to the chamber to present their findings, they spoke carefully. They didn't want to blame anyone openly, but they couldn't hide the truth either. They explained that Earth's frustration had been growing for years, and that the Council had failed to address multiple concerns raised by humanity. They warned that pushing humans too hard might only widen the distance. Some delegates accepted the findings with humility. They nodded and took notes. Others became defensive, insisting they had always treated humans fairly. A few even tried to shift blame, saying Earth should have communicated better. The Council began to split into factions. One faction wanted reconciliation immediately. They believed the Council must apologize for past mistakes and invite Earth to discuss solutions. They said the galaxy couldn't afford to lose humanity. A second faction wanted to wait. They believed humans needed time to cool down and that pushing now would worsen things. A third faction believed Earth was being dramatic and that the Council shouldn't chase them. This group was small, but they spoke loudly, which caused even more arguments. While the Council disagreed internally, the outside world began feeling the impact of the withdrawal more directly. Shipping companies sent urgent requests asking who they should coordinate with for new navigation routes. Research stations asked which projects were still active and which were put on hold. Smaller planets requested guidance because many of their programs relied on Earth's expertise. Even cultural groups asked what would happen to exchange programs and festivals scheduled later in the year. The Council didn't have answers. Not every hour brought a new wave of questions. The galaxy was used to Earth being involved, and now everyone felt the absence sharply. Meanwhile, reports began coming in about fleet movements in human space. Nothing threatening, just unusual. Some said Earth was increasing patrols around their borders. Others said new communication relays were being installed. Some even claimed humans were expanding several stations that had been quiet for years. None of this looked aggressive. It looked organized, planned, as if Earth had been waiting for the moment they could take control of their own direction. These movements made the Council even more anxious. They didn't know if this meant humans were preparing for long-term isolation or building something new entirely. One delegate whispered to another, "They're not reacting. They're preparing." That observation traveled quickly through the chamber. By evening, the Council decided they needed to take a formal step. They drafted a message, not one asking Earth to return, but one asking for dialogue. A calm, respectful message. It didn't blame humans or demand anything. It simply requested a conversation. The draft took hours because every word was debated. Some wanted it to sound strong. Others wanted it to sound apologetic. But in the end, they agreed on a simple version, hoping humans would respond better to sincerity than complexity. The message was sent through every channel available. Hours passed. Then more hours. Still no response. The silence felt heavier this time. It wasn't an angry silence. It wasn't a silent treatment. It was a silence that felt thoughtful, like Earth had already made up its mind and didn't want to argue anymore. By the end of the day, the Council chamber emptied slowly. Delegates walked out with tired faces, carrying datapads full of new problems and no clear solutions. Assistants followed with equally tired expressions. Some paused at the doors, looking back at the quiet chamber, knowing that tomorrow would bring even more questions. Outside, the galaxy continued buzzing with speculation. Every planet had a theory. Every news network had a panel. Every citizen had an opinion. But inside Earth's borders, behind all the noise and confusion, humanity remained silent, calm, focused, and working on something the rest of the galaxy still couldn't see. And as the Council tried desperately to regain control. For the Galactic Council, the fourth week after Earth's withdrawal felt heavier than the first three combined. At first, people had treated the situation like a passing crisis, something that would settle on its own once everyone calmed down. But instead of calming down, the silence grew wider, deeper, and harder to ignore. It was no longer a question of, why did humanity leave? But what happens to the galaxy now that they're gone? Inside the Council's main headquarters, tension could be felt in the hallways before one even reached the chamber. Assistants walked quickly with tablets full of new reports. Analysts whispered updates into earpieces, and security teams checked communication channels for any sign of a response from Earth. Everyone hoped anything would come from the human side. Even a short message, even a single word would have helped. But nothing came. The silence wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply firm. And that firmness made the Council more nervous each day. That morning, a special emergency meeting was scheduled. It wasn't the first emergency meeting since Earth left, but this one felt different. Every representative was required to attend in person, no matter how far their home planet was. Some had traveled for days to arrive on time. The Council realized the situation was too big for remote discussions. When the chamber doors finally closed, the head of the Council stood at the center platform. Their expression was serious but tired. They had barely slept for days. Almost everyone in the room could relate. Sleep had become a luxury. The head started by reading a report from the Interstellar Communication Agency. It confirmed that all diplomatic channels with Earth remained closed. Not damaged, not offline, just intentionally shut. There was still a clear signal from Earth, which meant humans hadn't gone dark. They were simply choosing not to speak. The representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Hearing it again always stung, even though they already knew. Next came a report from the Economic Office. Without Earth's participation, Several major trade networks were slowing down. Delays were piling up. Some companies were beginning to panic. Even the wealthier planets were feeling the pinch. Shipping costs had gone up. Travel times had increased. A few transport fleets even requested temporary protection from the Council, because Earth's absence created gaps that pirates and smugglers were starting to exploit. This wasn't something the Council wanted to announce, but they had no choice. The scientific office then presented their report. Dozens of research projects were stuck. Earth had been a leader in medical research, environmental restoration, and energy development. Without their collaboration, data-sharing agreements were falling apart. Laboratories that depended on shared information were unable to continue certain experiments. A few planets even had medical units waiting for new supplies that were originally scheduled through Earth's routes. After the reports were finished, the room felt heavier than before. The delegates finally understood the truth. Earth's silence wasn't just emotional. It had real consequences, real weight, and real impact across the galaxy. The head of the Council opened the room for discussion. That was when the arguments began. A representative from a wealthy system stood up first. They argued that Earth was being irresponsible, that their sudden withdrawal showed immaturity. They insisted the Council must take a stronger stance and set clear rules so no member could act this way again. That comment sparked instant disagreement. Representative from a smaller planet responded sharply. They defended humanity, saying Earth had supported them for years when no one else did. They asked if anyone had considered how humans felt before judging them. The smaller planets remembered how often Earth spoke on their behalf in meetings. Losing humans felt like losing one of the few voices that cared about them. Another representative added that maybe the Council had ignored Earth's concerns for too long. There were murmurs of agreement throughout the room. A delegate from a more neutral species spoke next. They said it wasn't about choosing sides. It was about survival. The galaxy wasn't stable without humans, and pretending otherwise would only cause further problems. The discussion continued for hours. Some representatives blamed Earth. Some blamed the Council. Some blamed the system itself. Some were simply scared of the uncertainty. By midday, the chamber felt like a pot boiling over. Everyone had different ideas, but no one had a solution. During a short break, small groups formed in every corner. Some whispered quietly, some argued, some looked lost. A few stared at the large holographic map of the galaxy displayed on the chamber wall. Noticing how strange the map looked, with one region, the Earth region, marked in gray, showing diplomatic status, closed. It didn't look like a missing piece. It looked like a warning light. When the meeting resumed, the head of the Council announced something unexpected. A team from the Observation Division had finally collected enough information to understand what humanity had been doing during their silence. The room leaned forward. Humans were not preparing for conflict. They were not isolating themselves completely. They were restructuring. According to the report, Earth was upgrading several of its communication networks, strengthening supply routes, building new research stations, expanding educational hubs, and reorganizing their planetary councils. The movements were not military, they were developmental. It looked like Earth was preparing for long-term independence, not hostility. The room buzzed with reactions. Some were relieved, some confused, others nervous. One representative said, "They're not turning away from the galaxy. They're turning toward themselves." The statement made sense. It explained why Earth wasn't responding, but still maintaining open public channels. It explained why they hadn't cut off travel, trade, or emergency cooperation entirely. They weren't shutting the door. They were simply stepping back from the Council. But even if Earth wasn't acting aggressively, the Council still didn't know how to move forward without them. As the meeting continued, the head proposed a new approach. Instead of trying to force Earth into dialogue, they would attempt something different: patience mixed with respect. Instead of chasing humans with demands, they would offer quiet cooperation. They would send updates about galaxy-wide decisions. They would keep Earth informed without pressuring them. Some representatives resisted at first. They thought this approach looked weak, but others argued that pushing humans had already failed. If the Council wanted to rebuild trust, it had to start by respecting Earth's boundaries. After hours of back-and-forth discussion, the Council finally agreed. A simple message would be sent to Earth, not a demand, not an apology, just a statement. The Council respects your decision. We remain open to dialogue whenever you choose. No questions, no expectations, no pressure. It was the first time the Council truly acknowledged that they could not control the situation. They could only respond to it. The message was sent. For a moment, everyone held their breath, waiting for some sort of reaction, even a small sign. But nothing came. The silence continued, calm and steady. Later that evening, long after the session ended, the hallways were filled with tired footsteps. Delegates walked slowly, as if carrying invisible weight. Some wondered if humanity would ever return. Others wondered if the galaxy would adapt to this new reality. Outside the headquarters, a group of citizens held signs showing support for Earth. They weren't angry. They weren't shouting. They simply stood quietly, holding messages like, "We value Earth," and listen to each other. People passing by slowed down, touched by the peaceful display. It reminded them that despite all the political noise, ordinary people still hoped for unity. Meanwhile, on Earth, the internal reorganization continued. Humans were working with focus and discipline, strengthening their systems and planning their future. They didn't ignore the Council's message. They simply chose not to respond yet. They needed time. Time to rebuild. Time to reflect. Time to decide what kind of relationship they wanted with the galaxy moving forward. And though the Council didn't know it yet, Earth wasn't shutting them out. They were preparing for something bigger, something that would reshape the entire galaxy when the moment finally arrived. But for now, they worked quietly, letting the universe wonder, and the silence continued to echo, carrying a message no words could express. Begins with a strange quietness spreading across the galaxy. While the Galactic Council is arguing day and night, Earth is moving in a completely different direction. On the surface, it looks like humans have cut themselves off from the Council and gone silent. But people who observe things closely know that this silence isn't empty. It feels like the calm before a storm, or the calm before something big and unexpected. Across space, many stations that usually monitor human activity start reporting unusual patterns. Something is changing on Earth, and the change is not random. Human space fleets, which usually stay near the inner systems, start shifting positions. They are not going to war zones or conflict areas. Instead, they are moving toward deep space places where they don't normally operate. At first, the Council tries to ignore it. They tell themselves that humans are probably just reorganizing. Maybe they are repairing ships or moving supplies. But as the movements continue for several days, the pattern becomes too clear to dismiss. Every fleet is moving with precision, almost like it is following a long-planned roadmap. Stations that humans abandoned years ago suddenly light up again. Old communication points become active. Outposts that were slowly dying become busy overnight. People across the galaxy start wondering, what exactly is Earth preparing for? Inside the Council chambers, panic rises. They hold emergency meeting after emergency meeting, but nothing gets resolved. One group says humans must be planning a defensive strategy. Another group insists humans are preparing something much bigger, maybe a large-scale expansion. A few voices whisper that humans might be getting ready to create a new system of alliances outside Councils control, but the real fear comes from the fact that nobody knows the truth. Humans have gone completely silent, but their actions speak loudly. They are building something. They are organizing. They are moving with a purpose that nobody can decode. Meanwhile, on Earth, life feels different too. The people can sense that something serious is happening behind closed doors. News channels talk about increased space traffic. Experts try to analyze what's going on, but even they don't know the full picture. What the citizens do know is that their leaders seem more confident than they have been in years. There is no fear in their behavior, no confusion. They look like they are following a clear direction that was decided long before the council even realized anything was wrong. In one part of the world, a group of technicians work on a massive satellite. They don't receive any explanations. They simply follow instructions that come from the top. Every day, they see new components arriving, advanced materials they didn't even know existed. In another region, crews gather at spaceports, loading cargo into ships that leave without announcing their destination. Those ships come back empty, refuel, and head out again. Workers talk to each other quietly, wondering what this new project means. Many of them believe Earth is preparing to protect itself from future disrespect or interference. Others think this might be part of a bigger dream. Perhaps humans are ready to build their own independent network of colonies, free from the Council's influence. In deep space, where silence is the only companion, human engineers are activating old research platforms. These platforms were built decades ago, but abandoned after budget cuts and political disagreements. Now, suddenly, every one of them has become important. Lights come back on. Machines warm up. Scientists return to stations they left years earlier, surprised to see them cleaner and more advanced than when they left. This revival is not accidental. It looks like someone has been preparing for this moment for a long time, waiting for the right time to flip the switch. The Council sends several messages to Earth, asking for a peaceful meeting, an explanation, anything. All they receive is the same automatic response as before. A simple line of text, diplomatic channel closed. Every member of the Council has memorized those words by now. They read it over and over, hoping someday they might see a different message. But humans remain firm. No communication. No negotiation. No updates. Some Council members begin to regret how they treated humanity in the past. They remember moments when humans tried to speak up, moments when humans asked for fair treatment, and moments when the Council ignored them. Now, when the Council finally wants to listen, humanity has already walked away. Still, the Council's fear grows mostly because human behavior is not chaotic. If humans were acting out of anger, their moves would look rushed or emotional. But this looks like strategy. Careful, thoughtful, long-term strategy. And that scares the Council more than any threat ever could. Back on Earth, people talk about the situation in cafes, at work, and in their homes. Some feel pride, believing their planet is taking a stand after years of being underestimated. Others feel nervous because change always brings uncertainty. But even in the middle of worry, there is a strange sense of unity. For the first time in a long time, humans across nations seem to agree on one thing. If the galaxy won't respect them, then humanity must build its own path. Scientists who work on confidential projects say nothing, but the excitement in their eyes gives away that they know more than they can share. Pilots who fly the new fleet routes understand the gravity of the moment. They notice how organized everything is, how every ship knows exactly where to go, how every operation aligns with something bigger. Rumors spread across military bases too. People whisper that Earth has developed new engines capable of traveling farther than ever before. Others talk about new defense systems that could protect human colonies even if the entire Council turned against them. But these are just whispers. Nobody outside the highest ranks knows the full truth. In the galaxy's outer zones, independent traders begin to see unusual human ships. These ships don't attack anyone. They don't announce themselves. They simply pass by, silent and focused, heading toward unexplored regions. Traders try to send signals, but the ships ignore them. They move like shadows, leaving everyone curious and confused. Slowly, a picture begins to form. Earth is not hiding. Earth is building. But building what? In private, some council members admit the truth. Humans no longer need the council. They never needed the constant criticism, the endless debates, or the restrictive rules. Humans have always been known for adapting fast. Give them a challenge, and they turn it into opportunity. Give them disrespect, and they turn it into independence. The council finally realizes that the moment they feared most has arrived. The moment when a species strong in creativity, unity, and resilience decides to stop depending on anyone else. The galaxy becomes quieter as everyone watches human activity closely. People across worlds talk about Earth with a mix of fear, admiration, and curiosity. Even species who never cared about human affairs now pay attention, wondering if humanity is about to change the balance of power forever got as Part 5 ends. One thing becomes certain. Humanity is not acting out of panic or anger. They are acting with purpose. And whatever they are preparing to do next, it will shape the future of the galaxy in a way no council decision ever has. Their silence no longer feels like avoidance. It feels like confidence. It feels like the beginning of a new chapter. Begins with the entire galaxy watching Earth with deep uncertainty. In every corner of space, from crowded trade hubs to quiet outer colonies, people talk about only one thing: humanity's sudden and complete disappearance from diplomacy. What started as shock has now become fear, curiosity, and confusion all mixed together. And the worst part for the Galactic Council is that they have no idea what humanity will do next. Inside the main council chamber, the atmosphere is completely different from the past. The loud arguments and confident speeches have faded. Representatives now sit in silence, looking at screens that show human fleet movements, newly activated stations, and unexplained communication signatures. These signals are not threats, not warnings, not messages. They are just signs of activity, quiet, organized, and steady. But even without words, the message is clear. Humanity is on its own path now. For the first time in decades, powerful council members realize they do not control the situation. They cannot predict humans anymore. They cannot pressure them, cannot guilt them, cannot lecture them. Earth has walked away, and the council does not know how to handle it. Some members try to break the silence by suggesting one last attempt at contact. They want to send a message that expresses regret, or at least recognition, hoping it might open a small door. But others disagree. They worry that sending too many messages might make humans feel like the council is trying to pull them back into a system they no longer trust. So the debate continues, slow and cautious, with no real progress. Meanwhile, regular people across the galaxy look at the situation very differently. Many citizens feel that the council pushed humanity too far for too long. They remember moments when humans offered innovative ideas, new technology, or peaceful solutions only for the council to ignore or dismiss them. And now that Earth is left, those same people whisper that maybe humans were right to walk away. They start to admire the strength shown by Earth, the confidence to take a bold step without looking back. On Earth, life is also changing, but not in a dramatic or frightening way. Instead, there is a quiet sense of unity. People across different places feel like they are part of a moment that will be remembered for generations. They know their leaders made a rare and powerful decision, one that required courage, patience, and trust in their own abilities. In busy cities, screens show updates about new scientific projects and space missions. Engineers and scientists appear in interviews, talking carefully about the importance of self-reliance, innovation, and preparation. They don't reveal exact details, but their calm excitement hints that humanity is building something meaningful, something that might protect them, guide them, or open new opportunities. In the countryside, families gather around radios or holographic displays, discussing how Earth's future might change now that the Council is no longer involved. Some feel nervous about change, especially older generations who lived through times when humanity relied heavily on interstellar cooperation. But even they agree on one thing: whatever happens next, it must be shaped by humans themselves, not by the opinions or pressure of other species. Inside hidden command centers, where only a few have access, human leaders review reports. They study every movement the Council makes, every public message, every piece of information that could affect Earth's safety. These leaders are not acting out of fear. Instead, they are being responsible. They know that the galaxy is uncertain, and humanity must be prepared for anything good or bad. But despite all the speculation, humanity is not preparing for war or conflict. Their actions are not aggressive. They are not building weapons pointed at other species. They are strengthening their own systems, improving their technology, and creating new ways to explore the universe on their own terms. Their focus is independence, not confrontation. Still, the Council doesn't understand this. They see activity, but cannot read the intention behind it. Their lack of knowledge becomes their biggest source of fear. Some Council leaders even begin to worry that their own worlds might start admiring humanity's independence. They fear that other species might also want to pull away from the Council and build their own paths. And in truth, small discussions in distant colonies have already begun, people wondering if they should follow Earth's example. One Council member finally breaks the long silence by saying the words everyone has been avoiding. We may be witnessing the beginning of a new era. The room grows even quieter. Nobody disagrees because they all sense it. The galaxy has relied on the Council for centuries. But now, a new power is rising, not a military power, but a moral one. A power built on confidence, unity, and quiet determination. Humans are changing the galaxy not by fighting, but by stepping away. In deep space, human ships continue their silent journeys. A few traders report seeing massive structures under construction, structures larger than any Council station. When these reports reach public channels, people across different species start guessing. Are humans building new colonies? A communication network? A defensive shield? Nobody knows. But whatever it is, it looks impressive. Back on Earth, an important announcement is broadcasted globally. The message is simple, calm, and direct. A human official explains that the withdrawal from diplomacy was not a reaction, not an emotional decision, but a carefully planned move to protect humanity's long-term future. The official emphasizes that Earth still wants peace with everyone, as long as that peace is respectful and fair. There is no blame, no anger, no threat, just a clear statement of independence. The speech reaches every corner of the galaxy. People listen closely, replaying it again and again. Some Council members feel relieved that humanity is not seeking conflict. But the relief is mixed with discomfort, because the message also makes something else clear. Humans are no longer under anyone's control. They will choose their own direction. They will build their own systems. And they will join or leave alliances based on respect, not pressure. After the speech, the Council tries to discuss what to do next, but the discussion feels pointless. How do you negotiate with someone who has already closed the door? How do you predict someone who doesn't share their plans? The Council realizes that they cannot force Earth back, and they cannot operate without Earth's influence. So they decide to observe quietly, hoping that in the future, humanity might choose to reconnect, but only if the galaxy changes its approach. Meanwhile, rumors spread across human society about what comes next. Some believe humanity will focus on deep space exploration, reaching areas nobody has ever seen. Others think Earth will build an alliance of independent colonies that share values of fairness and cooperation. A few imagine that humanity will simply live peacefully on its own, building a future free from external pressure. Whatever the truth is, humanity does not rush to explain. They move at their own pace, following their own timeline. As Part 6 moves toward its final moments, the galaxy watches Earth with a mix of respect and uncertainty. The Council is no longer the center of control it once believed itself to be. Humanity has stepped outside their circle and created its own Lane 1 that nobody else can fully understand or predict. And on Earth, in quiet living rooms, busy streets, research hubs, and space stations, people feel something they haven't felt in years, a sense of true possibility, a belief that their future is in their own hands, a calm confidence that no matter what happens next, humanity will face it with strength and unity. The stars are vast, mysterious, and full of challenges. But for the first time in a long time, humans are looking at them not with fear or frustration, but with hope. They know they are entering a new chapter, one that will shape not just their own history, but the entire galaxy's future. And somewhere among those countless stars, a new path is waiting, one made not by the Council's influence, but by humanity's own determination.